This is happiness, to be everything at once. Be unblinded, be unlearned, be unbridled and unburned.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Mood Prep. My name is Dave Nixon, and today I want to share with you 3 developmental models that I use every single day. Before I go into them, I would have referenced them at some point throughout the podcast, but I'll give you some specifics. But before I go into it, the reason why I want to talk about this is because when looking at the subjective space, our mental space, to our mindset, whatever it is, thoughts, feelings, emotions, that sort of space, in my experience when talking with people, they often don't have models that they follow and use. I mean, it's a very difficult place to be in because it's a soft science, right? All the psychology and stuff is a soft science. It's not saying that's unlike, the hard sciences, which might be more engineering. It could be mathematics. It can be like facts. The difficulty of the subjective space is that it's harder to prove that. But time and time again, there have been models that have shown to have a subjective truth to it. But the thing is that if we're going to really start to step into and take, responsibility and ownership for our mind, for our thoughts, for our feelings, and everything else, then having some models, and I say some models rather than just one, right? Having some models can help. It allows us to be able to understand the way that we think, what's within our control, different types of typologies, to sort of surpass and transcend just the psychological standpoints into spirituality, into being, without it being lost into just this sort of woo-woo, so to speak. And so the integration of psychology and the integration of being and spirituality is to me, it's true beauty, because it allows us to see the more measurable parts of our psychology whilst integrating this true concept of the being, the soul, the spirit that has been around the conversation's been around for as long as we've been writing, really. And philosophy feeds into that as well. So I want to share with you 3 models that I use in daily conversations, that I use when coaching on the floor, on the gym floor, that I would use in coaching conversations that I have with clients all around the world. And the real key over time is to actually have what's called a diamond approach. A diamond approach is like how there's multi-sides to a diamond. An approach to this is multifaceted. So it starts to look at all the developmental models and other models and being able to approach a situation looking through all facets of the diamond. And so having a diamond approach, having a multifaceted approach to whatever situation allows us to be holding a larger perspective. It also allows us to see more. It allows us to actually become more objective to the subjectiveness. The integration of all of those viewpoints allows for a far deeper understanding of what's really going on and also what's not going on. So getting started, let's start with the one that I do reference a fair lot, both, which is the Enneagram. So the Enneagram gets tossed into the same field as personality types. There's a big key difference between the Enneagram and the other personality type indicators, whether that be Myers-Briggs and the Big Four or Big Five rather, and disc profiling and all that sort of stuff. There's utility to it. Once again, it can play a role in the multifaceted way that we can look at things. However, the reason why I sit with the Enneagram is because it doesn't box you into a personality. In fact, the Enneagram actually is a psycho-spiritual model and shows paths of development to a healthier version of people that lean into those personality traits. So the way to think about it is that the Enneagram is actually there to unbox you from your personality, not to box you into your personality. It's completely different from that angle. So rather than going, this is a type A person, this is a type B person, as if that's them, it's looking at the personality structures that person has developed. It sees personality as something that we do, not something that we have. Temperament plays a big role in it, sure, but the interesting thing is that the birth of the child and the psychological birth of the child are not the same thing. When a child is born, they're psychologically not awake yet. They're not psychologically developed. And that happens by about the age of 3. And it's usually in the face of the primary caregiver, primary caregivers. which is usually in history mother and then mother father. And so the interesting thing around this is that it's looking at all the personality structures that are developed in the face of the primary caregivers, and then as they develop over the years post that. Now, how much of it is temperament, as in that's just a part of the soul and being that of the human being, and then how much of it actually is personality structures that they develop to be able to deal with reality? Because that's really the personality is the ultimate in cultural indoctrination, to be able to just deal with reality as we see it, based on the what's called an object relation to the people that we first really interacted with. So the Enneagram goes over 9 types, which unfolds, I think, into 27 different types. And it will show what people are like, or what personality structures of people are like under stress, under security. And then it can also give paths of development and practices and awareness practices to be able to move towards a healthier version of us. Now, a healthier version of us is moving away from the egoic structures that we feel have us, right? Because that's the interesting thing. When people have a personality, it's like, no, the personality has them. And this goes back to Carl Jung's thought of, do people have ideas, or do ideas have people, right? Really fucking powerful and interesting stuff. So the first one's the Enneagram. The second one is a thing called metaprograms. Now, the book to read on this, I wrote about it in my book. I gave 15 thinking patterns, I called them, but metaprograms in my book. However, there's 60. And the book to read here is Figuring Out People by Michael Hall. You can get it from his website. But if you Google it, it'll show up. Metaprograms are basically a perceptual filter that we have, and there's about 5 or 6 different variations of them, from like a choosing metaprogram, so meta meaning above and about, program meaning the way that something operates, right? Perceptual filter meaning the way that we see reality. So the way to think about these metaprograms is that there's a choosing one, there's like an emotive one, there's different variations of them, right? And then there's meta ones, such as self-esteem. Now, when a reality occurs and unravels in front of us, we filter that through our perceptual filters, and in this case, our thinking patterns and metaprograms. And when we filter that through our metaprograms, we start to see reality as we are, as our programs are, not as it is. And so a lot of the times we have we're going to say 7 drivers, right? It's actually 7, give or take. So usually it's 5 to 9, depending on the individual. And drivers are when we lean into one end of a metaprogram, such as like someone who's really global compared to being detailed, right? Or maybe the opposite, someone who's really detailed and it just isn't aware of how fucking detailed they are all the time, and it drives some people crazy, right? And ends up, until it's actually shown to them that that's actually a program that they run or a pattern that they run, that they actually end up doing anything about it had they want to, right? And so metaprograms are one of the things that I coach to every single day. It's one of the things I listen for in language. It's one of the things I teach every single time through all of my courses, all of my online courses, my seminars, all of it. But it's something to hear for every single day. And so, in other people, but more importantly, like in ourselves, like to hear our own egoic structures that maybe are holding us back. And usually if they're drivers, we can't actually often see that they're drivers until they're like gifted to us as in real time. When somebody goes, hey, I just noticed this. Is that a pattern for you? And you're like, oh my fucking God. Wow. Yeah, it is. Right. So metaprograms, the book, once again, Figuring Out People by Michael Hall. The last one that I'll share with you, one that I use all the time, one that I once again teach all the time, is Integral Theory from Ken Wilber. Integral theory, the one that I teach, it's very, very in-depth. However, the simple one that I will teach is simply a 4-person perspective of individual subjective, which is the emotions, feelings, and thoughts. It is the collective subjective, so the cultural feeling, the community, the values, right? And then there's the individual objective, which is the physical body, it's the traits, it's the attributes of the individual, it's the behaviors, everything that's measurable as a physical skill. And then there's collective objective, which is all of the it's that make up the functional fit of a particular space, culture, environment, forest, doesn't matter what it is. And so what happens is that we often have a bias towards one. We're often blocked in another. And then we often have one we have pretty easy access to, as in each perspective, right? And then we have another one that we don't have much access to. And that's a standard sort of variation of what most people will see reality through. The key thing is having this integral approach to so many things in our life is that we start to actually see reality from a broader perspective rather than our biased perspective. Now, when I say bias, I just simply mean a perspective that we really value. If we're valuing something, there's a chance we're undervaluing everything else. And so the integral approach allows us to actually see everything and take in a broader perspective of every single situation, every single moment, as opposed to seeing a reductionist viewpoint of every single situation. The book that you want to start on with that, Ken Wilber's got a fucking heap, but the book is simply Integral Vision. It's a very small book. It's got some pretty colors in it. Sounds silly, but it's actually a really good taste, really good entree into that sort of world around the amount of work that Ken's done. So something that I really recommend. Those are the 3 developmental models that actually help teach people how to get a better understanding and grasp of their own mental landscape, and then take steps to be able to improve that, to improve the subjective space in the exact same way people have programs for physical training, people have business plans for their business, exactly the same thing. Those 3 books that I'll offer for you once again. For the Enneagram, you can just simply read Wisdom of the Enneagram by Riso Hudson and Don Riso. Russ Hudson and Don Riso. And then it would be the Figuring Out People by Michael Hall and Integral Vision by Ken Wilber. On that note, team, I'm done. I hope you found this podcast very beneficial. If you did, it would mean the world to me if you pass it on to someone else that you think would also find it beneficial. If you haven't already, jump on the Facebook community, the Mood Prep community on Facebook. I'd love to see you in there. Otherwise, Tim, that's me done. I'm out until tomorrow. Peace and pizza. Kick today in the dick. Slay the dragon. I'll see you soon.